Hello, everyone. I hope you're all having a fantastic day so far. Today, I want to talk about coaching for team development. Now, if you're a leader or somebody who manages the team, it's very important to make sure that your team has the right dynamics in order for them to be high performers, to be effective, and to essentially get the delivery that you're all seeking to get based on your vision, values, and velocity. Now, what is coaching? I've spoken about coaching before, but essentially, it enables you to increase or improve your self-awareness so that you can have a certain level of self-management and do the same when it comes to group settings as well. So when it comes to the team aspect of things, you're trying to broaden your awareness as a team so that you can change your behaviors to work in alignment to company or team values. That's essentially what you're doing. So you want to be in positions where you're creating environments where you can have this coaching happening. Now, how does this happen? Of course, this happens with your regular one-to-ones that you have with your direct reports or with your colleagues or staff or whatever it may be, where you sit down and you try to understand what they're doing, how they're doing it, what their aims, their goals are, how things can be overcome in terms of challenges, etc., etc. All of these things are important. So there has to be a certain rhythm and cadence. And what I would typically say to people, and this is something that I've endorsed myself in previous places that I used to work in as a permanent member of staff, is that there needs to be at least some sort of weekly or bi-weekly meeting that you have with your line manager, or if you're the line manager, you have that with your direct reports. Okay, if you have a weekly or monthly, may be too long, because if you're leaving it to monthly, you're not necessarily having the right touch points. So maybe you want to do bi-weekly. Maybe one week, in terms of, let's say it's week one, is very casual, and then the third week is a bit more structured or whatever it may be in alignment to PDP and everything else. And that's the second point I want to raise. Personal development plans are so important to making sure that you get that high performance that is required from each individual within a team. But you have to have an idea of what good looks like. If you set no real vision, if you set no real values that really exude into behaviors, if you have no real objectives in terms of defining the direction that you want to move in and how that's going to be measured in terms of success, it's going to be very hard for you to even understand what each individual needs. Now, of course, it's not just about those one-to-one interactions on a weekly or bi-weekly basis or even monthly basis, as I highlighted before. It's also making sure that there are delineations in terms of group exercises and group away days where you sit down and you develop as a team. What does this look like? Well, ideally speaking, and this is in an ideal situation, you would have at least 4 touch points, 2 to 4 touch points, quarterly ones where maybe every, let's say in the first quarter and the third quarter, there would be less sort of like hands-on, and it's an opportunity to be updated about things and talk about different things and be more interactive. Maybe points or quarters 2 and 4 are definitely more hands-on, more interactive. You're focusing more on the strategic elements. You're focusing on doing workshops, all this kind of stuff to help you become better as a collective team. And maybe you've got someone who's trained to do some of this stuff, okay, who's been trained in coaching or mentoring or facilitation, or you hire someone like myself or whoever to come in and do this stuff for you as well. So these are things to start thinking about. Now, of course, I remember I was told about this whole sort of concept when I used to work in the commissioning team back in the day for the NHS, and really enthusiastic sort of like leader we had. He taught me a lot in terms of how to do leadership, sometimes how not to do it, but also just going for it in terms of like being a really high performing individual. And he taught me about this model known as the Tuckman model, which goes forming, storming, norming, and performing, and sometimes adjourning too. So what does this mean? So again, when you're forming, you're together for the first time, you're getting to know each other, everyone's being polite, all this kind of stuff there. It's kind of just melding and everything's fresh and new. When you're storming, okay, you're trying to make things work. Sometimes there may be conflicts or arguments. People are just asking other people questions. They don't really know the answers. Everything's a bit all over the place. When you have norming, that's when you're hitting standards and qualitatively and quantitatively you're doing what's supposed to be done. And then you have performing where you're going above and beyond. And there are people who are willing to help you within the team and pick you up so that you can excel in terms of your performance. Okay, and performance is defined by the metrics that you're meeting in terms of your objectives. And adjourning is where things start to die down or whatever it may be. Now, of course, bearing this in mind, this is normal. Some people may, or some teams should we say, stay in storming for a very long time. Some teams only know storming because they're not willing to do the work to develop the awareness to move into norming and then hopefully performing. Sometimes you can go back a stage if you haven't had the right level of maintenance to adopt this stuff. And so if you're in a workshop setting, and I remember I did this one time when I showed the team this sort of these different stages, you can understand what sort of things you need to do to move forward. Because if you're in storming, you know that you're looking out for people asking certain types of questions, or not having the confidence to do certain things, or being confused in terms of next steps to take, or not having a clear process in place. Storming highlights some of this stuff. If you're norming, most people are self-sufficient by nature, okay? And people are following protocol. If you're in performing, you're thinking about improvements, okay? How can you get to a point where you can get even more from the situation that you're in, but you know that you're hitting standards, etc., etc. So all of this stuff is key when developing your team, understanding what stage you're at, okay? I've got my notes to help me out as well. The second thing is to make sure that you have, again, really good objectives. They don't have to be smarter objectives or whatever it may be, but the objectives need to be able to capture what is being measured. Okay. And if you have anywhere between 3 to 5 objectives, let's say for an example, if they are smarter, make them specific. What does that really mean? It means it has to talk to something direct. It can't be vague. Okay. Maybe it's talking to a certain type of stakeholders. Maybe it's talking about a timescale. Maybe it's talking about a type of thing that you're trying to do. Because as they say, if it's not measured, it doesn't exist. It doesn't matter whether it's qualitative or quantitative. You need to be able to measure these things. Of course, they talk about measurable, achievable, relevant. And of course, relevant is based on your vision. So if you haven't defined your vision yet, if you don't know your set of values, stop wasting your time on developing objectives. I have been part of many different objectives and programs and initiatives that bring me in to try and help them do X thing, okay? And these leaders or whoever they are, the CEOs or whatever that they are really adamant that X needs to happen. And they think it's just going to be a magical thing that happens, or they're going based on goodwill of the fact that, you know, we have to encourage or inspire individuals to do more. When really people are stressed, people are tired, people are burnt out, people don't want to do more. They want to do less, but achieve more, so to speak. And so what I mean by that is, if you don't have alignment in terms of the higher vision, and if everyone's not on board with that in terms of communication and everything else, it's not going to work. It's just not going to work. So get the vision element of things sorted. Sit down, have these workshops, talk to people about, okay, what are you seeing currently right now when it comes to the workplace? Do you like what's happening? Do you not like what's happening? You know, what is it? Like, write down these different things. And once you've got to a point of writing these down and collecting different sort of ideas from different stakeholders within the organization, you then want to talk about, what do you want to see? What do you want to see? What are the key elements that you want to see? And of course, your vision needs to be innovative by nature. It needs to be time bound. It needs to be concise. It needs to speak to a certain type of audience. It needs to have certain types of values that bind everyone together. It needs to be inspiring. These are all things to bear in mind. Okay, so make sure you have your vision in place first, followed by your values, which are the things you deem as important, before you start thinking about objectives. Otherwise, there's no point. Seriously, you're starting the wrong way around. So start thinking about this stuff. And of course, as you've moved on from understanding what phase you're in, and you've also determined, okay, what your objectives are based on your values and your vision as well, you also want to think about, okay, cool, strategically thinking, okay, how are we going to maneuver? You know, I don't know if you know about operating systems, okay, or operating models. It's something I'm working on right now as a contractor. And really, it's defining the approach that you take in order to express unique value for that organization, okay? That unique value could be determined by commissioners or the visions or whatever it may be. Now, in order for you to do that properly, you need to be able to understand what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, what are your opportunities, and what are your threats, okay? And so this is where group work comes into play, okay? I've done this exercise so many times, not only just for myself, but also for small business owners, and obviously part of my sort of tenure when I was part of the NHS as well. And so this is a really good exercise because it gets you thinking outside of what you typically do and into the world of, okay, there is a chance that we can do this because of this, that, and that. It's the strategic cog that is spinning in this space. You also want to think about things like PESEL. So if you don't know about PESEL, that I'm going to try and remember it, but I know that is political, economic, I think social or socio-economic. You've got technology, legal, and I think I said environment, and I said economic or whatever. So it's one of those, okay? I think I've probably said it twice or whatever it may be. But you're thinking through the lens of those different factors that affect the markets and how does it affect you? So if it's political, maybe you're thinking about the US presidential elections at the end of the year, or maybe you're thinking about the UK presidential prime minister elections or whatever it may be. When it comes to, I don't know, economic, you may be thinking about interest rates or house prices or things that are going on in terms of wars and everything else. Technology, maybe you're thinking about the rise of AI or Meta. How does this affect you as a team, as a business, as an organization? This is not just helpful when it comes to, of course, bigger organizations or SMEs. This is also applicable to individuals who are trying to start their own business as well. Whether you be a coach, this, that, X, Y, and Z. So think about all of this stuff. Then you want to move into, okay, cool. We kind of know where we are. We kind of know what we're doing. We have an idea of all of this stuff. I think then what we need to start thinking about is how do we start communicating what we're about as a team? Okay, how do we do this? How do we ensure that whatever we've set out in the vision, okay, and the values is highlighted in terms of objectives? Now, thinking about values, okay, values will be expressed based on behaviors. I went to the Enterprise Nation event. I think it was the startup event, and there was a really cool company called Happy HQ. Really loved their ethos and everything else. And they were talking about things that I've been talking about for many, many years on Instagram. That is, values are the things that we deem as important, but not only that, they are expressed through our behaviors. So that's how you measure it. You measure it based on saying, okay, cool. If Tommy is looking to live by our company values, let's say, for example, one of the values is a hardworking ethos or whatever it may be. That needs to be expressed as a value of effort. Maybe that is shown through productivity in terms of the sales that they make, or through the different satisfaction scores that they get from customers, or maybe it's the feedback that they get from colleagues. Whatever it may be, it can be measured. And this is the sort of energy that we're trying to get through. But coming back to communication is really about, okay, cool. What stakeholders do I have in mind? Who do I need to bring on the journey in terms of understanding how things can be changed or improved for the better of the organization? Because this is all about coaching people for improved team dynamics. So you need to think about, okay, cool. Who are the stakeholders? How am I categorizing these different people? Okay, maybe I want to categorize them based on, okay, I know, okay, who's going to receive this the most. So these are known as providers. Who are the customers? Sorry, the providers are the ones delivering this. The customers are the ones who are receiving it. Who are the governors of this? Okay, so who's making sure all of this is all good? How am I speaking to them the right way and everything else? And there's also influencers. Influencers are the people who are going to sort of like shape how this is done. This model was known as CPIC, by the way, something I learned within my change management program practitioner sort of like stuff back in the day. So really useful stuff. I've used this recently to help an organization really understand how to position their sort of like stakeholders so they know what type of communications they need to employ. So once you've done that, you want to think about, okay, cool. Again, bring the team on board here. You want to think about what type of communications do I want? Do I want it to be sort of like unidirectional, so it's just one way? Or do I want it to be bi-directional where people can ask me questions and stuff? So one-way communication is very much like an email bulletin, okay, where they can't reply or whatever it may be. Bi-directional may be focus groups, sitting down with people, understanding their woes and their challenges and all this kind of stuff there, mapping all of this stuff out. And then you start to develop the plan, the cadence, when you're going to do this, how you're going to do this, who's going to do this, etc., etc. 5 bombs on a bench, okay? So that is what, why, when, who, where, and then the bench is the how. So think about all of this stuff. So once you've thought about that, the process you go through in terms of change is really about awareness, desire, giving them the knowledge, helping them take action, and reinforcing some of this stuff. It's known as the ADKAR process when it comes to the whole change management space. So you can see I've spoken about a lot here in terms of what you need to be thinking about in terms of bringing people down the process as a team, as an organization, when it comes to change from a coaching perspective. Remember, we started off by making sure that people have the self awareness to do this. And in order for you to do this, you need to make sure that there is the right level of psychological safety. Everyone's been speaking about this, especially on LinkedIn, especially people thinking more about DE&I and all this kind of stuff there. What does it mean? Psychological safety is essentially making sure that people are in a space where they feel comfortable to be themselves, okay, or to speak up, or to ask questions, or to engage, or to interact, but they don't feel ridiculed or put down if they were to say something, okay. They're included in conversation. This is what inclusion is being part of the whole, okay. And so bearing that in mind, knowing that there is diversity, i.e. there is difference in numbers, whatever it may be, you are including people in this stuff. So moving on from this, I think that was my WhatsApp notification, but anyway, moving on from this, again, psychological safety really comes down to how do you make people feel comfortable? That's essentially what it is. How are you making sure that there's the right level of support and challenge, okay? The support gives people that confidence and encouragement to know that they're doing well, whatever it may be. But that challenge is not necessarily negative. It's mainly making sure that you give people the opportunity to be creative and innovative. That's how you need to think about it, okay? So we've spoken about a lot of stuff, and I think the final stage is knowing how to manage conflict, okay? And what this really means is, okay, if people are not on board with certain stuff, if people are arguing all the time, if people are quite sort of like destructive by nature, as the coach, as the leader, as the person who is facilitating this stuff, you need to be able to be in a position where you can listen actively and deeply and ask empowering and effective questions to unearth what the true issues are, but not reacting, but being proactive based on what they say. So if you've heard of the locus of control, sort of like ideology in psychology, it basically talks about the fact that if you are reactive by nature, you have less emotional control. But if you are proactive, okay, you're responding in a way that is ready and not sort of like all over the place, then you have more emotional mastery or control. This is what you want to be. And so it's incumbent for you as the leader to ensure that you have that level of self-awareness for yourself. You need to do the work yourself, whether it's get a coach yourself, or it's journaling or meditating or exercising, knowing your body more, all of this kind of stuff there. This translates into the workplace, because for me, leadership is defined as living by example. It is living by example. So hopefully this gives you an idea. Okay, I've given you a whole range of stuff in terms of how you can bring your team into this space of improving their team dynamics. Okay, it really starts with understanding what phase you're at, but also moving through the different stages of knowing what you're trying to do, okay, what's important to you, what are the key things you want to focus on, and then from there, strategically, what makes sense to focus on and avoid maybe, in order for you to be effective, so that when you do communicate this stuff, everyone's on board. It's all aligned, okay? So the strategy is really key before you get into the plan and then the implementation. So hopefully this has given you some strong understandings of how to bring your team along that journey and really give them the chance to be more high performing. Remember, you have to have a certain level of empathy and ethics when it comes to, really taking your team on this journey, but also you need to have that right level of strategy to raise performance as well. So if this is something that you potentially are looking for, somebody else is looking for, then maybe we should have a conversation, because this is something I love doing. I love partnering with leaders and teams and organizations to really raise the game for themselves and improve their operations and improve their strategic direction as well. So if you want more information, again, you can check out the link or go to michaeltabirade.com. If you want to see more videos like this centered around life management and portfolio careers, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And as always, my friends, understand, reach, and expand. Peace.